Record on this computer. Okay, well, good evening to everyone. This is your foray into 8:45. We'll only be on maybe about a half hour. I just want to give you a quick overview of what the course is, what the assignments are, and to deal with any questions that you might have. I also have been receiving, obviously you got my email. I just want to get a sense of what your roles are, whether you're K-16 or you're outside of the educational environment, so I can put you into your teams. So hopefully, if I get everything by tomorrow, I will put the teams together and I'll explain what your teams are going to be doing. Now, I don't know if Dr. Keller had you working in teams. If she did, if someone knows what those teams were, you could send them to me, and that way I could see maybe you stay in the same teams or I'm going to move you into different teams. So whatever, okay? So here's what this is all about, discovering your source of leadership. And since you guys basically have never had me before, well, there I am a long, long time ago in Trenton, New Jersey. And obviously they always said Trenton makes, the world takes, so here I am. And so that is me, and a little bit about my background for, let's see, 48 years in education. As you can see, I've worked in the Pittsburgh Catholic school system for a while. Pardon me? So also I worked in the Reynolds School District, which is up in Mercer County, Northwest Pennsylvania, across from Youngstown, Ohio. There I was I came in as the Director of Counseling and Special Education. And what was so interesting about that was 1977, the first year that 94-142 came into play. And so I was at the beginning of development of IEPs for special ed kids. So that's been an interesting journey of watching how that has evolved over the many years. And then when I left Reynolds School District, I came to Elanco, which is in Lancaster County in New Holland, Pennsylvania. I came in there as the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, of which, when you look at all the other jobs that I had, I still live in New Holland, Pennsylvania. So I've always traveled to the other ones. So I went to Norristown, where I was Assistant Superintendent there for Curriculum Instruction. I was Acting Superintendent for a while, and then I moved into Montgomery County Intermediate Unit, where I was the Director of Curriculum Instruction for the IU. And then during that time, I was on loan to the governor's office, Tom Ridge at that time, because of a project. I don't know if you're old enough or you remember a project called Link to Learn in the late 90s that the legislators passed legislation that was attempting to get school districts and communities to entertain the development of what was called Build Penn, the Pennsylvania Educational Network, because at that time, people were starting to look at how we could use the internet to help schools and kids to learn and teachers to teach. So my job for 2 years was the project manager for Shared Vision, which was kind of interesting to see the legislators put into that piece of legislation, the concept of shared vision. So I went around the entire state of Pennsylvania getting school districts and communities and businesses to sit down and think about what they were going to do with this thing called the internet. And that was a very interesting experience for me. And to tell you the truth, the stories that came out of that, if I were to give them to you today, which I do have, are still relevant today. And that says a lot about, quite frankly, how really schools really haven't changed that much when you think about it from a structural point of view, in terms of a teacher's day, the schedule, the curriculum, given all the technologies that we have. We'll talk about that later on in the course. And then I went to Morrisville as the superintendent. That was in Bucks County, a very small school district. It was at the bottom of the barrel, I'll say that right now, in terms of performance, but we did some very interesting things there for 6.5 years, including getting rid of graded elementary schools and having teachers asked to have the walls knocked down between their classrooms so they could do different types of things. And I do have the videos to prove that we did that. And then after there, I left and went to Northwestern Lehigh School District up in Lehigh County as a superintendent. I was successful in Morrisville, I was successful in Norristown, but I failed in Northwestern Lehigh because they wanted to bring a change agent in. And so, yeah, I was a change agent, but what happened was they began to realize that change might not be what they wanted. So that was one of my failures as a superintendent. And it helped, get me to nurture my understanding of, who I was as a leader and what's necessary that, we all go through successes and failure in terms of our roles. Question is, what do we learn from it? And then for the last 10 years, I've been at Drexel. And if you have qualms about the EDD program, you can blame me and a couple other people because I was one of the co-designers of this EDD program. And so I've now been there 10 years, and I've just been appointed the director for ed administration and for higher education. So I'm going to be playing around in those areas, particularly with universities are faced with some very serious issues, the same way K-12 is in dealing with the realities of the emerging world that we're all moving into. So I just wanted to make sure you have a sense of who I am and where my experience is and where some of my expertise comes from. So I think that's very, very important. And as you notice, I'm your facilitator of learner. I'm not your professor per se. I'm not your instructor. What I am is I'm creating a learning space where you're going to be both teacher and learner. And so that is very important, and I'll draw off, you'll draw off of my expertise and my opinions over those 48 years. Doesn't mean I'm necessarily correct, et cetera, but I have, I think a fair amount of insight into the K-16 environment and also in terms of how organizations work in general. So just want to give you that quick overview of who I might be, and that what I'm about. And obviously, over the next 10 weeks, I'm going to learn who you guys are. So the books, quite simply, you have 2 books that are required. Otto Scharmer's the second edition of Theory U. Obviously, it's a very thin book. It'll be easy to go through, but now it has a lot of information into it. And I will tell you now that your colleagues from past cohorts, when they first got into the book, they found it very daunting. But I can guarantee you by the end of 10 weeks, this book's going to start making some sense to you in relationship to how it's going to fit into your developing leadership and who you are. And it's a type of book that it will really help you to think about practicalities of your own environments. And then the Gallows book, and once I get your teams put together, I'm going to put you in teams. You'll have responsibility for certain chapters in that, each team will, and then you're going to be sharing that information. But basically, the Gallows book just gives you the overview and thinking of all the top, we'll call them the gurus of leadership, whether it be in the business environment, well, mainly in the business environment in particular. And I think this book will help to broaden your thinking about it, along with many of the things that I will have for you as you go through the 10 weeks. The optional book, if you really get into this, eventually would be Otto's and his wife's second book, Leading from the Emerging Future, of which I do have the first chapter available for you. And as I said to you, you can download it, and that is optional. And we will be talking about this ecosystem to ecosystem economics because it does have a lot of ramifications for learning. So everyone able to get the books, or any problems related to the books? Okay, so guessing everyone has the books. Whoa, we did that again. So so let me just give you some context real quick. So obviously, I think in 800, you've seen this thing, you know, called the iceberg. And obviously, you went through understanding the event level, the patterns and trends, systemic structures, and mental models. Now, why this is important when you think about 800, and then you think about Heifetz and Linsky with the balcony and the dance floor, you think about the book by Russell Akoff and Greenberg in terms of learning right side up, and some of the and Michael Fullen's work, etc., that this is an important structure that I want you to keep thinking about, because it's going to relate well to when you do your research. And what I mean by that is, if you think about the event level as being what you want to study, the problem that you're going to delve into, and then the patterns and trends will be sort of like your literature review. It will be what you're looking at that supports the understanding of the argument of why you want to study that event. And then your systemic structure basically will be whether you do qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods approaches, and then the mental models will be your theoretical construct. So, you know, are you postmodern? Are you, do you believe in critical race theory? You know, are you post-positive? Whatever. So this model of the iceberg, I don't want you to forget about it and just look at it, well, okay, that was an 800, now we're going to move on. No, because these courses are designed to build off of each other, and that this is an interesting framework for you to think about going forward in looking at developing your research. So that's the 800 framework, and now what you're moving into that we're going to place on top of that is the U. And so here, what you're really going to learn about in the U and practice the skills is basically how do you begin to understand the mental models that underpin the systemic structure that causes the types of behaviors that we see in people, in organizations. And so what you're going to do is learn how to go down the U. You're going to understand what sensing is, how to transform your perception, and then learn the skills to get other people to surface their awareness of realities around them by then moving down the U to the bottom, which is called presencing, where you really begin to transform yourself in who you are to allow for the possibilities of new futures to emerge as we deal with complexity in any organization or in the world we're living into, which then moves up the U to that third level called realizing and transforming action. So what you're going to hopefully get by the end of 10 weeks will be some research skills, particularly in terms of interviewing and understanding that. But more importantly, you're going to do a deep dive into finding out the source of who you are and why that's important in terms of developing the necessary leadership skills to deal with the unpredictability and the complexity of the world in which we're living in. So I hope this gives you kind of the context for what we're going to be doing, you know, in the course. Okay. Any questions, comments about what I've said so far? Okay. So let's look at your assignments. Because obviously those are the important things you want to know about. So you're going to have reflective conversations, and you're going to do those within your teams. Once I get your teams put together, you'll get a little bit more feedback on that. So what I want your team to do is to meet every single week, however you want to do it, whatever medium you want to do. And you want to talk about, okay, here's some of the videos I've been looking at, you know, that what he's been giving us, you know, what the readings are, what the reflective questions are. So that's your space to create conversations. And you'll understand why the space for conversation becomes important. So there's no discussion board. What there is conversation. And so what I am going to ask every team to do, and you figure out how you want to do this, is that you meet weekly, for as long as you need to and however you want to do it. So that's important, and I trust that you're going to do this. I will ask you questions about those over time, but that's basically what we're looking at. So this next one, which will be due in week 7, is a very, very important process. And you'll get more information about this as we go along, because 2 things will happen here. What you're going to do is to really begin to understand what are the sources or the mental models of leadership, both from yourself, but from the person who you're going to designate as the leader that you're going to interview. And then what you're going to learn is how to do a leadership interview process using the you. And what it will help you to become, not become, but really develop an understanding of how to turn off your assumptions when you're listening to someone, to develop an empathetic understanding of where they're coming from. And I'm going to tell you, it is not easy to do. And I will tell you, over the 8 years that I've been doing this with students, they will tell me that this was one of the most difficult tasks they've ever done. But it's a very important one, because one, it's going to help you to understand who you are as a leader, but it's also going to give you a sense of how to interview when you do your own research. So you'll get more information as we go along about this. And then by July 23rd, you're going to let me know who that person is. But I don't want you to think about it yet until we get into the content a little bit and you get a better sense of what this is about. So that's the assignment on the interview of the leader. The next assignment then is you're going to do a collaborative project within your team that's going to go after an essential question that I want you to think about, and then your team is going to demonstrate its collective thinking about this, about these concepts, and that they will become more clear to you as we go along. And the way in which you'll present it will be in a social media format. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. So there's no writing involved in this. It's more the ability for the team to demonstrate an understanding through a visual medium of the ideas that are found in the you. So obviously you'll get more, I'll give you more insight into that as we go along. So that's the final project that's due in week 10. And then you're going to do a short academic paper. And it's due between week 8 and 10. And basically what I want you to do is really to begin to think about what you developed in 800 as you started thinking about leadership. And remember, Peter Senge always talks about, the idea of where the word leader coming from lead, which means step over the boundary, to die, to let something new to emerge. Well, I want you to begin to think about what you learned, particularly with Heifetz and Linsky, and what you then are gathering from Otto Scharmer's work and what you're gaining out of Gallo's, and you're going to put together a short paper so I get a sense of where your scholarly writing style is. And basically what that means is I'm going to see whether or not you understand how to use APA. So make sure, and I'm sure Dr. Keller probably took you through this process, make sure you have a copy of the latest APA manual, which I believe is the 6th edition, which is basically your Bible for going through this doctoral program. So make sure you have a copy of that. And I just want to see how you develop an argument and how you support that argument and how you're able to do citations. So that's what that paper is about. It's it's going to give me a little insight into your thinking, but more importantly, to get a little sense of what and how you're beginning to write academically. So, one of the things that I want you to think about is this quote, and I don't know if you got this in 800 or not, but one of the most important things about any organization is the impact of the mental models. So if you think about the iceberg, and mental models basically are the assumptions that we carry around our heads as individuals, or they're the assumptions and the habits of actions that take place in an organization. And many years ago, Robert Pirsig, back in the 70s, wrote a book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And that was really a big thing back then. I really didn't understand it that much. But now, as I reread it, again, thanks to Kindle, I really began to understand that this book was really a systems thinking book. And there's a concept that he talks about, that if a factory is torn down, but the rationality which produced it is left standing, then we're just going to simply produce another factory. And from my years of being a superintendent, an assistant superintendent, that quite frankly, that's what's going on under the guise of school reform right now. That we really haven't surfaced the underlying assumptions of why we're doing what we're doing in these organizations called school, whether they be K-12 or universities. And so what reform does is basically reproduces the past. And so, yeah, we got technology and we got whiteboards and we got social media and that stuff. But again, as I said to you, from a structural point of view, schedules generally are the same. The contractual arrangements are the same. Curriculum is basically the same. The assessment strategies are basically the same. Now, I'm going to be interested in seeing, some of you seem to be working in some interesting schools. So as we go along here, we'll see how true this thing pans out. So with that then in mind, is that really what the U is going to give you is another conceptual framework for thinking about collective change. And so really what we're looking at is how do you as a leader, first from yourself, understanding who you are, and then how then, once you discover what your deepest aspirations are all about in terms of who you are both professionally and in your life outside of work, what those things are, then the question is, how do you get an organization to begin to look at that? And that's what the U is going to give you. It's going to begin to give you the tools to begin to understand how to create the types of generative conversations that are going to be necessary within your organizations. So that's kind of, the framework for what we're looking at this particular point. So from Heifetz and Linsky, this is an extremely important idea that anytime that there's deep change, that you're going to need it, and there's going to be a much more need for new type of learning for people, that's where resistance takes place. And so that's really the greatest danger to anyone who leads, that if you don't understand how to navigate why we need deep change and how to get people to understand new learning, then you're going to be in serious trouble as a leader. So I think that one becomes extremely important. So what that ends up with then finally is, this is what the basic premise of Theory U is all about. That really what you want is the results of a system really comes from the quality of the relationships of the people within that. And the quality of relationship really depends upon how aware people are about the impact the structure has on their behavior. And so what Peter Senge always said is that, as he moves in, and Peter's working more and more with schools today than instead of businesses. And basically what he's saying is that he wished that they didn't have the word systems thinking anymore, because it really doesn't get to what it's at. That really what it's all about is understanding the nature of relationships between and among people within any type of organization or any type of social network, whether it be a family, a church, civic group, a school, or whatever you have. And so Theory U is going to help you to get to that level to understand the levels of awareness that a leader needs to know. So in essence, then, that's what this is all about. This is what your 10-week journey is going to be all about. I will tie it back into 800 periodically. And so you saw what the assignments are. So what questions do you have? Or comments or whatever? Or I did such a great job, you know what it's all about. So you don't need to ask me any questions.
So I'll ask a question. It's Christine.
Yes.
In 2008, I had the opportunity to attend a session with Peter Senge and Otto Scharmer up in Vermont, where they do their
the leadership thing. Yes.
Yeah, and it was great. And so I was thrilled that, you know, I'm seeing the same the continuity. So how has it evolved, that Otto's work? Where is it? How is it sustaining through these past 10 years in industry, in higher ed, in?
Well, all over the place. Matter of fact, next week, I think I'm going to put in, he's running what's called the U Labs right now. Mm-hmm. And they're available to all of you. What I'm going to highly recommend that all of you join the Presencing Institute website, because there is so much information there. You'll see some of my stuff up there. You know, I've been trained by Otto. I know him personally. I know him quite well. But what Otto's looking at is redefining what learning needs to be. Now, he's focused primarily on the university level. So he's been doing a lot of work with edX and been running these U Labs. So he's got approximately 48,000 people worldwide interacting with these things. And what's so interesting about them is that what he recommends is that all these physical hubs are forming all around the world. In China, in India, Philadelphia has some. There's some in Pennsylvania. I started one down in DC because we have an office down there. So he's really looking at some interesting ways of redefining learning, of which you will see his latest presentation from the U Lab that deals with learning and creativity. So that should give you a great insight into that process. Okay. And as I said, Peter's really active with Camp Snowball, which is a group of schools, mainly on the West Coast. They're doing a lot of integration of systems thinking into the curriculum from pre-K all the way up. So yeah, they're doing quite a bit of work. And if you really want to look at that second book that they have out, that will help you a lot. Plus the other thing is, and this is something for all of you, and matter of fact, tomorrow I'm going to email him about this. He's looking for some research centers that are going to look at phenomenological approaches to research. Now, just so you know, my primary research design is phenomenology, because what I've learned as a superintendent over time, that we do so much to people, whether they're adults or kids or parents, to them, that they have to do things, that we never listen to their voices on how they're experiencing what we're doing to them. Mm-hmm. So he's looking at developing some research areas, and so I am going to really connect in with him to see if those of you over time who are interested in doing certain types of research, because I saw a couple of you are interested in mindfulness. And obviously mindfulness is very big, because you'll see a technique called social presencing theater, which is a very interesting way to prototype ideas in a social context. So yeah, he's, to get to your question again, he's doing quite a bit. Peter's doing quite a bit. And we're trying to connect more and more to what he's doing and to this global network. So I
Great.
hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Anything about assignments? Our next Zoom session will be week 3. You will get from me every Sunday morning a weather forecast, obviously, either from New Holland or Cape May, New Jersey. And then I'll kind of give you the overview of what the week is all about. And I do send those out as MP2s, but sometimes when I send it through the Drexel email, you can't open them up. So if you let me know that and I send them through my email, you have a tendency to be able to open them up. But you'll get a weekly voice announcement from me, just give me a quick overview. The other thing is, you have my Twitter account, you have my telephone number, which is my cell phone, so you can reach me, text message, call me. Anytime you have questions, just let me know. Text me, email me, call me, or whatever. Okay? So that's what I'm here for, and I will try to be as faithful as I can to get to you all. The problem is, this quarter I have 4 classes. Now you're probably going, oh, woe is you. But, so I have kind of an interesting collective this summer, and I trust me, scheduling these Zooms with 4 classes during the summer has been quite a trip in itself. But then those of you who are principals and have to do high school scheduling, you're there, oh, poor you, right? So whatever. So that's it. So if there's no questions, this will be recorded. I do upload it to my YouTube site. So I know a couple of people who could not make it, and it will be available. I hope once I get everybody's background to have the teams out to you by the end of the week, the latest. And I'll give you more direction on that Sunday morning. Okay?
Thank you.
That's it. So nothing else. So if you got enough of me, then you can leave. I'll say goodnight. This person on. Yes.
Quick question. This
Yes.
is Alethea. Are most of the Zoom sessions going to be at 6:15? Because I don't get off work in the summer until 6 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah, generally. So if you come in later, that's okay, and you can pick them up.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
it will be recorded. But if you get in there and then, if you want to go through the agony of watching it, it will be up on YouTube for the second.
Okay. I just wanted to give you heads up that
Yeah,
I may not
okay.
chime in until 6:30.
Yeah, and that's why I record them, because my problem is I have no idea, what your guys' schedules are. So I say, okay, they're out there. If you make them, great. If you don't, well, you can watch them and then ask me questions or set up some time to talk to me.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, no problem. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. And then, as I said, I will